Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Escape Room. And what Escape Room essentially about is we center on these six strangers. They're all given this mysterious invite to said escape room. And what it first seems like something that's just, a lot of fun and something that are just a bunch of simple puzzles and games for this, I believe it's a $5,000 cash reward. They quickly realize that this is a lot more detrimental to their health and also to their lives than they really thought it was, and that what they thought was a game could very well be real, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Escape Room overall, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I was really dreading this film. I mean, considering this is the first film of the year, first week of January, and it's a horror film, and it wasn't an Insidious sequel, really not a good sign at all. I really did not have much hope for this film. It looked incredibly generic. It looked like something that really wasn't going to impress me. And look, I will say this. How is Escape Room overall? It is better than most January films, for sure. It is not nearly as terrible as most of the January horror films that we do get. That being said, it is still not a good movie. This is a film that really could have been a lot better, and I'm just getting into it right now, starting off with the cast. And surprisingly, that's actually one of the better parts of this movie. I think the cast here overall definitely did a very good job. I was impressed by pretty much everyone here. I will admit some of them in some spots weren't as good as they could have been. The two biggest standouts are easily, I mean, right off the bat, Logan Miller is really great here. I really loved his work in Love, Simon, and he definitely does do a very good job in this film. Deborah and Woll's also very good here. But also, someone else that I really love was Nick Dodani. Nick Dodani, he's not in the movie a lot, but what he has here, I thought he was definitely a lot of fun. This is someone who is basically obsessed with escape rooms. He's done it and before, and he is kind of leading them towards, the ways to get out of it and things like that. So he was definitely a very entertaining character. Everyone else definitely did have their moments. I will say Taylor Russell, the main actress here, not as strong as she could have been. I think she definitely had some weaker spots, especially in the third act of this movie. Same with Jay Ellis. I wasn't really the biggest fan of him. Tyler Labine I thought was okay, but for the most part, the cast was a lot better than I was expecting. They had actually really good chemistry. They did work very well together. And again, for a January movie, I was surprised by how well acted this film really was. I'm not saying it's like, the greatest acting or anything, but everyone did do a pretty suitable job. And the fact that I can give the film at least that is praise enough. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because that's where the film really does fall flat. It is directed by, surprisingly, Adam Robitel, again, who also did Insidious: The Last Key. And similar to that, he doesn't really bring a ton to this film, but I do think he brought a little bit more to it than he did with The Last Key. The Last Key, it felt like anyone could have directed that. It really didn't have any sort of specific style to it. It was just another entry in the Insidious series. Here, there's a little bit more effort put into it. I feel like he did a good job with kind of making this not as serious as it could have been. This is a film that for a while is actually a lot of fun. I think the fun aspects of the escape room are really well done. He definitely does a very good job with that. In terms of horror, though, not really there. The film was never particularly scary, though there are some suspenseful scenes that I do think he did a good job with. As a whole, though, his directing, it's nothing special. It's nothing special. It isn't really anything that amazing. I did hear his film, The Taking of Deborah Logan's really good, so maybe maybe I'll check that out sometime, but as a director, he's just not really one that does a lot for me. Like, he's not one of those directors where I see him like, oh, I know the film's probably going to be really good because Adam Robitel is at the helm. He's just a director that's suitable. He's a capable director. He's not really anything amazing, but I do think he did a good job directing this film. The writing's where things get a bit clunky, though. I will say, the thing that this film did a better job with than I expected is actually its characters. All the characters in this movie are actually fairly complex. They all have their own sort of plights that they're going through. There is a reason why all of them are here. It's not just random. There's actually something that does connect all of them together that I don't want to get into because it's actually going to spoil things. But I thought they actually handled that pretty well. All of them do have these pasts that kind of haunt them and traumatize them. And there are certain points in this movie involving the escape room where they have to do things that are, you know, really things that they really don't want to do. They're things that are, they have to step out of their comfort zone. And I thought that was actually very well written. There's a terrific sequence, for example, with Deborah Ann Woll's character, Amanda. Amanda's someone who is a war vet. She served in Iraq, and so she has very bad PTSD when she's in like crawl spaces or things like that. It makes her think back to some really hard times, and I thought that was really well done. Again, for a January movie, there's a lot more thought put into this when it comes to character, and that's something that I was definitely very surprised about. Also, the escape room in general is very creative. There's a lot of cool stuff they do with that. I'll get more into that with the cinematography, but for a while, like I said, I was actually really enjoying it. I thought it was actually a lot of fun, and the character stuff I thought was actually fairly well set up. I was ready to come on to here and say, this is actually a really solid movie. This is a good January movie. I can't believe I'm saying that about a movie in the first week of January. And then the film takes a nosedive. And unfortunately, this certain place that ends up going, it never fully recovered from. Suddenly, characters, they start acting a lot more over the top. They start doing things that just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And really, after a certain point, it just becomes very tiring. And that's really the biggest problem with this film, is that it just didn't fully stick the landing. At first, like I said, the escape rooms were very creative. There are some really cool ideas in there that I definitely really did enjoy. But after the fourth or fifth one, it just got really silly, to the point where it became unintentionally funny. There's one scene especially, one escape room they go to. I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, but I could not, I tried to contain myself as best I can, because I was in a theater, I was trying to be respectful towards the audiences and things like that. But I found it really unintentionally hilarious, and after that scene, it was very hard to, A, take this movie seriously, B, give a shit about what was going on, because just what they end up doing from there, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. It does not very well, it doesn't feel very well thought out, and it feels like someone else wrote this movie. Now, the film does actually have two writers, Bragi F. Schut and Maria Melnik, and what I can only believe happened here is that one of them wrote most of this movie. They had a screenplay done and everything, but then someone else wanted to come in and kind of polish it up and kind of put their own sort of flair into it, and that's why this feels like two drastically different films, especially after a certain point the film does take. You know, after a certain direction the film does take, it really does feel like a different movie, and it doesn't really work in that sense. You know, at first, the film, like I said, was actually a lot of fun, and it was genuinely good. Then it turned into more of a B movie, and that's when I think it really did not work at all. So again, the writing is better than I could have expected. Definitely a lot better here, but it's still not very good. It doesn't fully stick the landing. The setup to the characters also were not very good. They were very brief. They don't really give you a lot to latch onto. And again, that's because they are planting the seeds for the eventual reveal of what's really happening to all of them. There is actually a really well done scene where they're talking about all their traumas and things like that, and that's something that I wasn't really expecting. But after that certain scene, that's when the film really did go downhill. So the writing overall, nothing really that special. The cinematography here, though, is actually really good. I was very impressed by it. The escape rooms actually do look very creative. They bring something different to them. The first one's like this very sort of hot room that they're in, and the heat plays a major role into it. Then the second one utilizes the colder temperature, and there's a really nice winter landscape there. But the third room is really the one that sticks out to me. I thought the third room was actually really creative. It's like this upside down room where, you know, the floor is the ceiling, basically, but the floor is also the floor. Everything's just kind of tilted upside down. So there's a lot of them having to move around, and there's also this this music that plays, and every time, like, the music plays or this phone rings, the room starts to shake, so they have to, like, hold on to things, and that was a really, really captivating sequence. I was surprised by how into that sequence I really was, but it was actually really well done. The stakes were pretty high there, and you really did not know the way things were going to play out. For a while, like I said, the film was actually fairly unpredictable. I was not expecting where it was really going to go at all, and that's something else that I was definitely very surprised by. And the rooms themselves do actually look really well done. They're very creative. There's a lot more detail put into them, and I was overall impressed by it. I liked the way the escape rooms, I liked the look of them, I liked the feel of them. They all gave you something different, and I think they definitely did a really good job with that. I will say, though, anytime this film does use CGI, though, it really doesn't look that good. And that is because of the budget. Like, I know the budget wasn't too high and things like that, but just overall, it just does not really work here. The CGI did not really look that great, but the escape rooms overall, definitely, like I said, they looked really good. The score to this film, it's not really anything that amazing, but it's a good score overall. It definitely does give you sort of a 80s sort of horror vibe, which I definitely enjoyed, and the editing. And that's another problem I have with this film, is that I do think the film is a little bit too long. There are definitely some chunks that could have been cut out, especially in the third act, and especially what happens after the third act, because really, without spoiling anything, this is yet another horror film that doesn't want to just be a singular horror film. No, it wants to start a franchise, and the way this film ends is completely idiotic. I already wasn't enjoying the third act to begin with, but where they end up going in the last, 3 minutes is completely ridiculous, and I don't know really what they were thinking there at all. It does not make any sense with the type of story that they were trying to tell, and it just felt so incredibly flat. I don't know what they were really doing there, and again, it was very disappointing considering how fun those first two acts were. I really was getting into it, and I was really happy to say that, oh, this is actually a very solid horror film, but it just couldn't stick the landing, unfortunately, and that's really what let me down with this film. It does have a fairly talented cast, most of which are really good here. Again, some of them do have their moments where they're not too good, but for the most part, I was enjoying them. I thought that the chemistry between, like I said, was very strong. There's some really creative ideas in the escape room. I will say there is one other... Also, this is kind of a nitpick, but something else that did bother me is that this is another one of those films where they kind of show you something that's going to happen later on, and they kind of hinted something, and I think it would have been much more effective if they didn't show this. So that way, what happens is not as obvious as it really is, and I just think it could have just forward the momentum a little bit, because again, the film definitely does have you on the edge of your seat, but there is one thing that you know from the beginning of the film, and I think they could have nixed that all together, and I think it just would have made for a more thrilling viewing experience overall. But like I said, there definitely is a lot to like here, and that's why it's so disappointing, because of how downhill the third act did go. It went so downhill that I really was not enjoying it anymore. It became more of like a guilty pleasure, and then it just became really boring, and I wasn't enjoying it after that point. There definitely are some really cool ideas here. There's a lot more effort put into it than I really did expect. But at the end of the day, this is not really a film that I'm going to remember at all. This is a film that I'll remember more for its sequences than I really will as a film altogether. And unfortunately, it still did not really give me what I wanted. It's a better January movie than most that come out. Most horror films that come out around now, they're trash. They're terrible. They're some of the worst you'll see all year. This is surprisingly an all-right film, but it definitely could have been a lot better. So for those reasons and more, I am going to give Escape Room overall a C. Honestly, the fact that I was so disappointed in the third act, that alone shows how much better of a film this is than it really did seem to be in the trailer. But overall, guys, you have seen Escape Room. Let me know what you thought of it. Love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and then we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.